Okay, so welcome everyone. I know this is the GROW dissertation, well, it's boot camp. I don't know the formal title. They forgot to tell me the entire title. What is it? Dissertation thesis boot camp, session 2, October 7th, increasing the likelihood of your IRB application acceptance. That's the last word on there. I'm like, I can't read it. Okay, so my name is Dr. Heather Webb. I'm from the Department of Kinesiology. I am also the vice chair, co-chair of the IRB, as well as the going off as vice chair of the IBC, which is Institutional Biosafety Committee. I love Office of Research Compliance. So, but this, I'm going to pretty much talk today about getting your research materials, your applications, through the Office of Research Compliance, which is IRB, IACUC, which is Animal Use and Control, and IBC, which is Biosafety Control, as painlessly as possible, because this can be a huge pain. Some of you guys are already starting to experience the fact that this can be a huge pain. So, Office of Research Compliance itself is also in research and commercialization, but it handles 3 compliance areas. Like I said, IACUC, which is Animal Care and Use Committee, which if you're going to be using animals in your research or in teaching in any way, you're supposed to get an approval through them, just for the safety of vertebrate animals. So if you're using invertebrates, they're lower life form, you're okay. So if you want to have cricket fights in your classroom, that's fine. Play with grasshoppers, that's fine. So when you get into stuff that has backbones, all of a sudden you need to start getting some approvals. So if you want to look at the effects of like petting a dog on student learning or having a dog in the classroom, technically you're supposed to go through IACUC, just to make sure that the dog's going to be safe, the children are going to be safe, because the dog's not going to give them any diseases or anything like that. So it's a two-way street there. Biosafety Committee, which is the IBC, does research, teaching, testing activities involving biohazardous materials. Essentially blood tissues, not that you're going to be doing anything with recombinant DNA, because y'all are in education, so hopefully not. Not going to be releasing sarin into your classrooms, that would be bad, so not a big issue with those. But if you were going to be doing something with that, that's what that committee handles. The biggest one might be if you were trying to get some like saliva samples or finger stick type stuff to look at health or other issues. Those would need to be sent through and approved. And then, of course, you guys know IRB, Research Board, research involving human subjects, which is what most of you guys want to hear about today. So, each committee is actually scientists, non-scientists, and community members. IACUC also has to have a veterinarian on board. The TAMUCC IRB has 3 faculty members from each college represented, plus community members. Usually members of the clergy or medical community, someone that's kind of representative of the committee. We have, at the moment, 2 community members. We're picking up a 3rd. Since Dr. Bowden left, we're short 1 College of Education Human Development person. We're working to replace the missing members right now. So, but what is a human subject? Big important piece. What are human subjects? Well, living person, of course. If they're dead, usually that means that you don't have to get IRB approval. And we are collecting information about a living person who an investigator gets data through either interaction or intervention with the person, or we get identifiable private information. And it's always that identifiable that starts getting into the, can I figure out who this person is? At the moment, if I was like going to do a study in this classroom and I was like, okay, there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 people in this classroom, and I identified 9 females and 1 male, guess what? We can probably figure out who the male is. So,
go, Freddie.
So we do have to be aware of.
To the IRB.
Yeah. So we do have to be aware of. Sometimes we have identifiable information. If you take heights and weights, and all of a sudden you've got one child who is 6'2" and 270, and everybody else is 5'4" and 1 in 100, it's like, yeah, we can probably figure out who that one kid is. And so we do have to be very aware of that identifiable data. So human subjects research. This is the federal code that says research is a systemic investigation including research development, testing, evaluation, designed to contribute to generalizable knowledge. And I handed out the little flow chart as far as what research is and how we determine if something is research and where it's going to go down that review train. The biggest two issues are usually, one, the fact that it is research development. I've heard numerous times, well, it's just pilot study, pilot testing. I don't need to actually, I'm just doing pilot work. I don't need IRB. You do need IRB because development is pilot testing, but pilot testing is research. And so we have to protect the human subjects. Even if they are you need to be protected from yourself sometimes. Or if you're doing it to your friends to see if this study works on them, you owe some protection to your friends to make sure they're not going to be harmed in doing this. So pilot studies do count as research. And then contribute to generalizable knowledge. Is it just for a class thing? Is it never going to be used? Do I not plan to use this outside of this setting? If it's just for the classroom, it's never going to see the light of day anywhere else, it's not research. If you plan to use it in any shape, form, fashion, in any sort of way, for the most part, it's considered research. So it's kind of a grayish area sometimes. If you have questions, feel free to ask the IRB and we will try to help you out as much as possible. That's also why I gave you guys that flow chart. It kind of clears things up as best it can. So, like I said, this is a more basic flow chart. Ooh, okay. Is it research? Data specimens private? No. So if you want to do research on like the Islanders baseball team, their heights, their weights, their positions, their batting averages, their on-base percentages are all public record. You can look at the media guide, find it, not a problem. That's public, you don't have to get IRB for that information because it's already out there and anybody can get access to it. Classroom related grades and stuff are not public knowledge, public access. That has to get IRB approval. So, just because if it's private approval, if it's not, then the IRB does not have to see it. Are the data specimens individually identifiable? Again, one male in a group of 11 people. Yeah, we can figure out who he is. So it's one of those we need approval because we can figure out who people are. If you do anything, and HIPAA actually has a guideline of 18 questions that you can ask, and I'll put those up there if you guys want to see them, of names, dates, identifying locations smaller than the state level. So students in the state of Texas, you're okay. Students in San Patricio County, they get more identifiable. Even though there's a lot of them, all of a sudden it's like, okay, students at Gregory Portland High School, all of a sudden I can start to narrow down the pile really quickly. And if I'm really bored, I could probably figure out who some of these people are. So again, in this day of data-driven stuff and mass data, we can sometimes figure out who some of these individuals are. So we have to be aware of that. And then, do the data specimens already exist? Yes. Okay. It's already pre-collected data. We still need to get IRB approval for this. There's always that magical, well, I already collected the data, and I knew it was going to be a study, but I collected it, and now I'm going to ask for retroactive. Try not to do that. It's been done before. You just have to be very careful in your wording. Don't act like this is brand new data you're collecting and then submit it 6 months later like you're going to now just start collecting it. Because we'll look at stuff and be like, something's not smelling right here. And you'll get rejected, or else you'll get a stern talking to, and some other things can definitely occur. So make your life a lot more complicated. If you are...
What's the bottom line there? Just tell the truth?
Tell the truth.
And then we'll probably let it go?
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's like, and usually it's that spot at which it's like, you know, we've got this data, we were looking at it, and we realized about a fourth of the way through, or maybe a third of the way through, that, oh, wait, I can do something with this. Then, yeah, submit the IRB. Be truthful about what you've already done. This is what we're completing. Is it going to be identifiable? That's the big key. Are you collecting data that we could figure out who these individuals are? At that point, consent may be needed.
Because there are lots of reasons to collect data to not do research.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In our department all the time.
Exactly. But if you find it, if you can make it as non-identifiable or just have it so there are no identifiers, which is always sometimes a problem because ages, sexes, and it's like, all of a sudden we start getting into the, okay, now it's getting a little more, we can figure out who these individuals are. If you just have 11 individuals and don't say where they're from or anything else, that's not identifiable. But because of the way research and journals are and reviewers are, they're going to be like, ooh, how many males, how many females, and you start getting into this. I didn't have IRB before, but okay, so you have to deal with those things as best you can. Most of the time, if you won't have information or won't be able to decipher, that's going to be an expedited review. We'll check it, it'll go out, and I'll talk about the review levels here in just a second. We can also, if we can't tell who they are, 11 people, they'll be an exempt. Does not mean you don't need IRB, it still has to be sent to IRB. It just means that it doesn't have to go out. It gets reviewed by the co-chairs, by the vice chair, the chair of the committee. And we can usually go, okay, this is harmless, minimal risk, no real major issues here. We can approve it pretty quickly, assuming that you don't need it the next day. If you need it the next day, we're going to be like, sorry. But usually we're trying to get things back within 2 weeks if it's exempt, and faster if possible. But without having somebody in the ORC office, Marvine and I, Dr. Oliver and I are handling all of the applications coming in and assigning them to reviewers and everything else. So it's all the stuff we have to do, plus we're teaching, plus doing research. So it's, you know, how many things can we juggle? And unfortunately, sometimes things we just hide under tables and try not to have things fall on us. So, but that would be exempt. And then usually for most of y'all, data will be collected for clinical purposes or specimen collection will be minimal risk. So again, depends on the clinical purposes, usually medical, more in that sense. But again, you're collecting it for research purposes. We can identify the individuals. We can kind of figure out who they are. But again, minimal risk is going to get expedited. If they're special populations, depending on, and children are considered a special population, but depending on what it is, if it's classroom-related activities, it doesn't put them at a greater risk, typically. And so that may also be expedited. Sometimes, depending on what the topic is, it may go for full board review, which is kind of covered in that flow sheet as well. So the process itself, pretty simplified, really simplified, massively simplified here, unfortunately. You submit the application, we review it for completeness. We have a couple people in the office that are reviewing this to see, is everything there? Are all the materials that I'll talk about included? Are your consent and assent forms, if assents are needed, are they included? Do you thoroughly explain and fill in all the boxes that need to be filled in? If not, it'll get shoved back to you with, you need to do this, 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 and this, or you need to send us stuff. Once we get all that stuff, the co-chairs will review it, determine, and even though you guys will mark exempt, expedited, full board, that decision falls on the co-chairs. We go, this is exempt, we'll review it. This is expedited, we'll send it out to reviewers. This is full board review, it'll go on the next, it'll be up for review at the next board meeting. And then the reviewers review it, full board reviews it, or if it's exempt, we review it and go, okay, approved, not approved, pending, approved, pending, these changes, these additions, these whatever, as far as that goes. And then the decision will be made. Either exempt, determined exempt, not exempt. If it's not exempt, we'll send it for a review. Expedited, it can get approved. It can get approved pending re-review. So sometimes you'll get it and it's like, well, it's pending. You still can't start your research, but you need to fix these things, and then we'll send you a full approval letter saying you can now begin. And then full board, we can approve it, we can deny it, we can table it, we can give conditional approval. Again, same thing with the expedited. All these can occur to some extent. Usually we do not deny IRBs. We send it back. It's like revise, resubmit. Revise with major revisions. You know, with questions about this is where we're having issues. And we try to make those as plain language for you as possible so you can understand. The goal here in the next couple months is to, if you guys have anything that goes before full board review, is to allow you guys to come in when we discuss your proposal and let you guys answer questions. You, your advisor, can come in and respond instead of doing this email back and forth and misunderstanding and taking 3 times longer than what having a conversation in person might. Because we don't have anybody in the ORC office right now, that's much harder, but Dr. Oliver and I are both willing to meet with students if you guys have questions, or even researchers if you have questions. Just need to get on our calendars, which are kind of busy. But we're happy to meet with you guys and answer questions if you have them, to avoid this taking 3 times longer than it needs to get this stuff done. Okay, like I said, 3 levels. Exempt is actually the lowest risk. Usually no greater harm than what anybody's doing normally. So you're not adding any additional stress or problems to their life. Most of this is usually, or if it's anonymous or publicly available data, this is also usually exempt. Least potentially harmful experiments. Again, not going to add any risk to these individuals. Expedited has minimal risk, not anonymous. We can identify the people if we worked hard enough to figure it out. And usually requires an informed consent, letter of support if you're working at a school or something else. You just can't go in your classroom and be like, I'm going to do a research study on my students and not tell the principal, the superintendent, or anybody else. That will not go over well, because CCISD has its own IRB you have to go through. So there's 2 IRBs if you want to work in the schools. Some of the hospitals, Driscoll has its own ethics board you have to get approvals through. So then you have a 2-part, the one at the university and the one at Driscoll, or the one at the university and the one at CCISD. So kind of got to know that culture. And then full review, greater than minimal risk. Usually this is non-exempt research involving children, vulnerable populations, special populations sort of thing. Not that you guys are going to be working with experimental drugs or devices, hopefully with kids, but you never know. Any invasive procedures, poking, stabbing, jabbing, taking blood. I like to do that stuff. So I always have to go full board. Or sensitive questions about sexual preferences, practices, illegal behaviors. If you're asking questions about alcohol, drug use in 18-year-olds, because alcohol, tobacco, well, alcohol for certain is illegal, and you're asking them about their use of alcohol, yeah, that's a sensitive topic. Because if you're getting any information that might be identifiable for them, all of a sudden they're committing an illegal activity. It's like, oh, so that sort of thing has to be reviewed and approved, and that's going to go full board because of those types of questions. So where do I start? Well, probably not there. You know, that's where I like to start, but you know, setting the whole world on fire, probably not a great spot. So, first thing, investigator training. I'm sure you guys have already done city training. Yes, no, maybe. Hopefully you're current. It lasts 2 years, so if you did it, but you're not sure, getting it updated is always a good idea. You and your entire research team that's involved, anybody that will have access to the data, access to identifiable information, needs to get city training as well. So if you've got friends that are helping you, that you're putting on that IRB, or we can see you're going to have some students or some undergraduates helping you, they need to do city training as well. And for the most part, usually social behavioral, responsible conduct of research, the basic course, is the one that you should take. Yes, ma'am.
Just to confirm, if we took it like more than a year and a half ago, or
I would
probably need to go
probably
through
would
again,
take it again, and
at
you,
least the minimum.
yes, and you can do the refresher course.
Okay.
There is
so
a refresher course
refresher course. Okay.
that is on there on the city training page. So if you've done the basic course, then you can do the refresher courses and stay up.
Okay.
But yes, you do need to make sure, because if you run out in the middle, we're going to be like, oh.
Yeah.
It's kind of like first aid CPR. You know, we know you don't forget it, but as far as DHS and NIH is concerned, if you don't have record of it, the lawyers are going to have a field day.
Right.
So, but like I said, most of you, why is it doing that? If there's anybody in here doing anything with blood or biological safety sort of stuff, biological hazards, sometimes the biomedical, but for the most part, most of y'all can just do the social behavioral. So I get to do both of them. It's so much fun. So usually, most people say it takes about 2 hours to do it from start to finish. If you've done it a few times, like I have, I can get through it faster, but then again, I also know the questions really well at this point in time. But yeah, it's about 2 hours to get through the full thing. You have to pass all of it at 80%. There are some of the questions that you can't miss a question because you won't get 80% at that point. The four question sets are annoying because it's like, oh, I missed that one. I got to start over again. But you can retake just that section. So pretty simple as far as that goes. Like I said, timing is everything with most of these. Starting projects sooner rather than later. Starting the IRB sooner rather than later. You kind of know what you want to do, or you've got some project ideas, start writing them down. Start getting them on paper. It's wonderful to talk about them, but it's just an idea. There's nothing, if it's not on paper, it doesn't exist. So start writing it itself, write it down, because it does take longer than you think. It's like, oh, okay. And then allow yourself more time than you think you're going to need. Because again, IRB takes time. If you've got to go through CCISD or Driscoll, it takes time. If you've got to go through other entities to get access, or you only have access to them on Tuesdays and Thursdays during the month of May, you're like, okay, I've got one May to do this, and then I won't see them again until September is the next time. It's like, oh, crud. So, make sure you've got all that kind of idea in the back of your mind. Depending on the complexity, it may get shot back to you for further clarification. We do have a wide variety. Like I said, 3 individuals from each college. We each have our own little takes on safety and ideas, and usually we can come to agreement, but somebody will bring something up and it's like, oh, yeah, that could be an issue, and we want it clarified. If we email you about a question, get back to us. You can take a week, but the longer you take, the more it gets into the back of the queue, because it's like, okay, they forgot. Then all of a sudden we have to go back and reread everything and be like, what was the question again? And try to figure, So if it's, the fresher it is in your mind, the fresher it is on our mind. And again, those one-on-one conversations can also occur if it's a major issue, and that way we can help talk you through it. If you're planning to do anything abroad, my data collection is supposed to start in 2 weeks. Let me send this in and get it approved. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. And if you're planning on traveling abroad, there's actually more materials and there's a few more forms you have to fill out. And I'll talk about that here in just a second. Again, available resources. Talk to the people that have done this already. There are people working on their data collection, so they've gone through this process. Hopefully they will not say it's too horrific, but they will probably give you some heads up and some warnings about things that probably will help and make this work better. Coming to something like this, great idea. Colleagues that have submitted to the IRB, again, or talk to the IRB people. We are more than willing to help and assist. I've helped students in my department write more IRBs than I really want to. I'm not involved with their project other than I've read through their IRBs and be like, fix that. They talked about doing planar flexion and dorsiflexion across a planar surface. I know what that means. They were walking across a flat floor. Again, jargon, bad. And they had a lot of, and it's like, they don't know what, I know what you're doing, but nobody else in that room is going to know what you're doing, so. And then, like I said, if you have specific questions, email us, we will get back to you. Might take a day, it may be same day, but it may take a day to get back to you. But we will respond back with hopefully good answers. Typical proposal, you guys have seen the form. It also should include any consents and or assents. If you're using children, you have to have assents from the kids. Protocol, which is written out in the form, but if you want to do a little attachment too, we will take the attachment to make it clearer. Please do not send us your entire method section from your proposal, because we don't want to read the entire method section. We want the short version of this stuff. You know, what's going to end up in your research article type of stuff. You guys have seen read research articles. A lot of those came from dissertations or thesis. But you know, your thesis research, your thesis method section, my thesis method section was 37 pages long. I boiled it down to 6 paragraphs. So we want the 6-paragraph version. So any additional supporting documents, I'll talk about that here in a second. Usually questionnaires, anything they're going to see, hear, interact with, we need copies of. Have read to them, we need copies of that stuff. Any advertisements, flyers you might use to recruit subjects, we want to see those. Interview guides, if you're doing interviews, you know, scripts for interviewing, emails that you're going to send to recruit them or debrief them with, all that sort of thing should be included. All the forms you do need are on the IRB website, and everything gets submitted to IRB. That's the easy way of putting this all. Like I said, the informed consent, survey instruments, questionnaires, interview questions, guides, recruitment scripts and materials, anything they're going to see, hear, read, respond to, interact with, we should see. Yes, ma'am.
So when you say the copy of the informed consent, that's what I'm going to send out to my participants, but not necessarily what I've already sent to my participants and they filled it out. Does that make sense? So if
Just the blank form.
It's just the blank form that
Mhm.
I want my participants to say, please consent to do my study.
Yes.
Okay.
I need to see that
Right,
sheet.
not that I've already sent it to them.
No.
Right,
No.
okay.
I need to
Because
see. I need to see that sheet, and they should not get the informed consent until
I've already been approved.
you've been, yes, exactly. Usually the easiest way is to assign them numbers or letter or combination of letters and numbers and use that sort of thing and de-identify and don't match up the consents or those individuals with who they are. And then we report everything as group data. We're usually okay. And this person is 6'2" and weighs 135. I'm going, okay, tall and thin. Let's see. And he's male. Let's see if I can find this person. And then I can start figuring out, and I would know about him based upon his responses. So that's where that confidentiality comes in there. And that's also that protection of the data that we ask about. How are you protecting the data? Who has access to the data? How are you planning to get rid of this data at the end? technically, flash drives should probably be shredded after you're done with it. Because you guys know, when you delete something, it doesn't actually really truly delete. I actually have some flash drives that I shred. They're relatively cheap now. I put that data on that flash drive, and I'll just, at the end, it just gets shredded 7, 8 years down the road after the articles are published, and I've gotten past that point of people are going to be like, there's issues with this data. I'm like, that 3-year span of post-publication, that is like, okay, if nobody's brought up any issues with this after 3 years, it can all go away. I finally shredded my thesis and my dissertation material about a year ago. I was only 12 years out. I'm like, okay, I can let it go now. It was hard to let it go, but it was a fun party to set it all on fire afterwards. So shredded it, set it on fire. It was a nice bonfire on the beach, so it was good that way. Couple tips though. Big thing, clearly state purpose. Aims, objectives, justification, layman's terms. You know what you're talking about, your advisor knows what you're talking about. We've got some people from philosophy in there. We've got some guys from business. We have some people from engineering. Can they understand? Everybody in the room has a PhD or an MD. But at the same time, we have our little areas and little niches. And while we're smart, we know a lot about a little, and a little bit, well, we know a little about, a lot about a little and a little about a lot. So we sort of think we kind of know what you guys are talking about, but don't assume we actually know what you all are talking about. Give it to your parents. Can they understand what you're doing? If they can't understand what you're doing, we're probably not going to be able to understand it either. Again, data collection methods, collection dates, location, frequency, duration. How many times are you doing this? The plainer this gets, the easier this gets to understand. If you want to put a table in there or attach a table of, like, here are my plans, like that research plan of action. Like January, I will collect this data. February, I will collect this data. March, I will collect this data. It will take me 2 hours to get this information-informed consent. It will take me 35 minutes to get this data collection done of these surveys. It'll take me 35 minutes to get this data collection of these surveys. I'll do one last data collection in April, collect the data, and then do a debriefing with the students and let them know what's going on. Just write that out so that we know what you're doing. Bullet points can be very beautiful in this. Paragraphs are nice, but even a table or a chart that shows us exactly what you're doing. Short form so that we can understand it. Because sometimes that's the hardest thing, is to sit there and read through and you're like, I have no idea what these people are doing. And you guys have read that in some research articles that you're like, I think I know what they were talking about, but this order of stuff doesn't make sense. And so you look for the timeline, or you look for the little table or the chart that shows how they collected the data. IRB likes those. Makes life easier to figure out what you're doing. Again, state your sample size, describe the population. Males and females, veterans, who they are. If you're excluding people, why you're excluding them. If you're not excluding people, you're okay, but if you're excluding individuals, why are you excluding them? If that's the purpose, I just want to look at Hispanic females, then that's who you're researching. I'm just going to recruit Hispanic females. Why? Because this study is looking at, and it would be the first to investigate this practice on Hispanic females. Just justify why you're choosing or not choosing to use populations. And why that sample size is warranted. I'm going to do 9,000 people. Why? I'm going to do 9 people. Why? It's what's been done in the previous research, power analysis, meta-analysis, something power analysis to figure out this is what I need for good. Always recommended to oversample. you need 50 to have good power. Well, you're going to try and sample 75 because you're going to probably have, on average, a 10 to 15% dropout. And so, you know, you want to oversample a little bit so that if people drop out, you're like, I hit 50, but 20 of them dropped out, so now I have 30. Now I have to go and ask to get 20 more. So again, ask for a little bit of oversampling and admit and just say, we're going to oversample based upon we expect a dropout of. You know, survey research, usually about 30-35% of surveys come back. So you need 1,000 responses, you're going to have to send out to about 3,000 people. So keep that in mind. So again, and that's good response rate of 30-35%. I've seen some of 12 to 15 depending upon. So again, it's kind of one of those, do I think this group is going to respond to my survey? How many people do I need to send it out to? And again, oversampling is not a bad procedure. Again, screening procedures, inclusion, exclusion, which I talked about already. Any vulnerable populations. Again, kids technically vulnerable, but if this does not expand from their normal activities, it will usually end up being expedited or potentially exempt. Because even though there are a vulnerable population, if it's classroom activities, it's not going to require full board. If you're all of a sudden you're getting prisoners, pregnant women, all of a sudden, you know, pregnant women could potentially be a vulnerable population, but if you're not asking them to do anything outside of their normal pregnancy activities, they're technically not vulnerable. They are, but it's the matter of, I'm just having them answer surveys about their job. I'm not asking them anything about their pregnancy. I'm not asking them to do anything beyond sit at this computer like they normally do and answer these survey questions about their job. Not putting them at any risk. They may get recruited because we're just sending this out to people that do this job, whatever it might be. But again, so don't overthink the special populations boxes. Again, the other big area we run into is the recruitment issues. If you are recruiting from like college students in classrooms here at the university, whose classrooms? Which professors? Which classes? Are you just going to randomly pop up in Island Hall and then randomly pop up in Bay Hall and then randomly pop up in the faculty center and go, can I recruit your class? Yeah, no, that's not going to go over. So again, usually you've talked to professors, you know whose classes you're going to go ask. Write those down. Write the classes down that you plan to go recruit from. That way we know who you're talking to. Obtaining, and then again, state time, location, setting of obtaining informed consents. Who's going to be obtaining the informed consent? How is it going to be obtained? Is this going to be a mass pass out to the class, and then those that want to be in the study drop it off in the box, and those that don't just take it with them? No, because anybody that walks out, you know they didn't do, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, everybody knows. Just everybody drop it in the box. You know, make it so that if you do that sort of thing, everybody, and then you just sort out who wants to be in the study based upon who returned the consent. So little things like that. Or if you're having a research assistant help you, you know, okay, are they going to be obtaining consent? Find out who's going to be doing this stuff. Again, how are the identifiers be removed and how will the information be kept private? That's use the identification number, give them our participant or subject number. Consents are kept over in this box or this file cabinet that's locked, in this locked office. The forms or the surveys or the online surveys don't have any identifying information linked to it. They do put in their demographic data, the consent's over here, this is over here, and we can sort out and divide in that sort of way. again, how the risk will be minimized. Again, those risks, that breach of confidentiality, the psychological potential risk, that sort of thing. And then any anticipated benefits of research. You know, they may not get a whole lot out of it. They may feel good just for participating in research. That's a benefit. They might learn a little bit about themselves. You know, they might learn their height and weight. They might learn something that's kind of useful to them. You know, there may not be, we don't see any real potential benefits to this research for the individual in the study. However, this will be generalizable to classrooms that could be used by teachers to assist students in the future. So, you know, not just that individual benefit, but the benefits of your research in general, and hopefully there are some of those. Because otherwise, if there's no benefit, the IRB goes, what's the point? So that's always one of those little hang-ups. It's like, why are they doing this? You know, if we can't see, we'll ask you, why are you doing this? If there's no benefits to mankind in general, we've got some issues. And then and then if you're going to notify them of the results, they may, you know, it's not always necessary, but information will be presented. If they want to know their results or how they scored, they can email me, I'll email them back, or they can come see me. We'll give them a handout or a sheet that gives them their results. So a couple options as far as how it goes. Biggest other application concerns, missing materials, like I said. This is where we usually end up sending it back to people. If the person, like I said, if they will see, hear, read, respond to it, IRB wants to see it. So scripts, emails, flyers, yes ma'am.
So like if we're giving like a test,
Mm-hmm.
do you need to have like the answers that go with
We
it?
don't need the answers, we just need the test. Yeah, we don't care what the right answers, wrong answers are. We just want to know what the questions are. So if we're going to see it, that backside stuff, not our problem. It's that front side, what will the participants interact with or see or hear, respond to, is what we want to see. Anything along those lines, whether it's recruitment, consent, surveys, all that sort of thing, we want to see all of that. There's also some additional paperwork if you are conducting research internationally or working with non-native speakers. These sometimes get forgotten or left off. If you're going international, there's a cultural evaluation of international research form that says that you've got permission from the village or village elders or whoever might be involved, local individual that can say that this is normal for them. This does not pose any greater than minimal risk sort of thing. So there's some, again, because what's normal for here is slightly different for Kingsville, slightly different for Mexico, slightly different for Costa Rica sort of situations. Different in Australia and all that sort of thing, so you've got to be aware of the cultures. There's also an interpreter and a translator certifications. Doesn't require major, just has to show that they are native speakers that are translating and how you translated it. Or if you've got an interpreter, you know, are they a native speaker? How are they interpreting? Google Translator works if you're going front to back. We just need to know, you know, we got this form. It was originally in Spanish. We translated it in English. And we're trying to make it match. Or usually it's like, this was in English, and then we translate it to Spanish, and then it's like, we give it to someone to try and read over and go, do these match? Which is always a fun sort of situation. We don't get a lot of those, but we do have some. So if you're using interpreters or translations, we do need to know. Yes, ma'am?
So for like the consent forms, if we know already that some of our participants will, like they're Spanish speakers or like speak other languages, do we have to have that in those languages also?
If they are non-native speakers, depends on the situation. If they speak English, and most consents should be written at a 7th to 8th grade level, is what we're looking for. And we'll run it through, used to run it just through Word or whatnot to see.
But like if their parents have to read it and I don't know if their parents speak English.
Yeah, you would need a Spanish translation for the consent then.
And that would have to be sent to you also?
Yes.
she asked a consent form question, I have one.
Sure.
Can we do a consent form online? Do you have a?
Yes, there's a lot of gray areas with the online that we're still working through. At the moment, we will accept online. The system is having issues with online, and there's been new guidelines set forth by NIH as far as online survey instruments, as far as willing those to the consents. And usually what that means is you have to get a consent at the start, and then at the end is the new piece. They want the individual to reconsent and say, I still want to be in this study when we finish.
But that's interesting. So after they have experienced whatever the stimuli are, like a survey and a article or something, they have to reconsent.
That's one of the new ones that's coming out. And there's going to be more information coming out on that here in the next month or so as far as that all goes. So that's a ever-changing kind of moving target at the moment, just because there's been a bigger push to these Qualtrics, SurveyMonkey type things. And the privacy is always a big issue with data breaches and Yahoo and Equifax and everybody else. It's like, who actually owns this data and where is it stored and how do we protect? So that's where that comes in. Like I said, the other big issues from the IRB, because I asked them about it yesterday, like I said, avoid jargon. Make sure we can understand what you're saying. Because again, we understand a lot, but sometimes there's some stuff that comes in, cognitive. Most of the time we can figure out what cognitive dissonance means or cognitive information, but again, what the person's thinking. Everybody can understand that. So makes it a lot easier for individuals. Proofread your application, please. Nothing makes reviewers kind of start looking at it with this kind of angry face, like spelling mistakes and bad grammar. We're just like, we're not the grammar police, but if we can't read it, we just start going, ooh, they left out stuff. Where it might have been approved pending, like minor revisions, and this is now like, send it all back. Make them work harder, because this is just, that same sort of thing. So make sure you proofread it, because nothing says you did not really do a lot of work like big misspellings. So it's one of those that we've got a few people that are like, if it's not spelled wrong or the grammar's bad, growl. I don't know why that popped up in red. Make sure you use the most recent version of the application forms. We've gone through multiple application forms in the last couple of years. They should all now be functioning correctly again. So, if the application you have has any people listed as contacts for further information at the bottom of the yellow sheet on the front of page 1, you've got the wrong form. It should look like this. It should tell you to email, submit with supporting documentation via the IRB mailbox at irb@tamucc. If you have further questions, email research.compliance@tamucc.edu. If your form says anything different, you've got the wrong form.
And all the ones online are updated.
All the ones that are online are now updated. Because there were some out there, your advisor may send you one and say, here, just use this one. Probably not the right one. So check that, because if you use the wrong form, we're going to send it back to you and be like, guess what, you got to put all this stuff in the right form now. Yay. So keep that in mind. Like I said, once it's sent through, it'll go through pre-review. Once your study is ready, it'll be sent out. Once the review is complete, you'll get a letter saying what's going on, approved, approved pending, or deferred. If it's approved, you can start data collection. If it's approved pending, you have to wait till you get the approved letter. Approved pending just means minor revisions. Deferred means usually we won't send those out other than it's major revisions or you're in a holding pattern sort of situation. usually the holding pattern is it's been tabled if it's a full board review, or it's been deferred till the next board. So that sort of thing. Pending deferred, again, make the requested changes, send it back to us. Any changes you want to make, if all of a sudden you're like, oh, I want to add some stuff, you have to make an amendment.
What kind of changes, like, what?
If you're going to add a survey, if you're adding research team members, you've got 3 more friends that want to help out with data collection, you've got to add them to the IRB, and they've got to get their city training done. If you want to add, or if you're removing a survey. Now, if it poses harm or something, and all of a sudden you've discovered this survey gives them paper cuts and allergies, you're like, we're going to take that away because that's harmful. Take it away first, and then put the amendment in and be like, we don't know what happened there. There's also an action report that has to go in if people get harmed. For the most part, you're okay. Or if they drop out because they go running from the room, there's some forms that should be filled out.
If a student changes classes or leaves?
Yeah,
or
that,
something like
no after action report on those. If something happens, like they start stabbing themselves in the eye with your form, yeah, you need to put in a action report on that one. So there's little weird quirks with that. That would be a call Office of Research Compliance or one of the IRB officers, and we'll be like, you should probably submit a form on that one. So, like I said, should be reviewed at least once annually. Usually exempt will be exempted. Once it's exempt, you can go continue on. Expedited review or full board, usually once per year, it has to be renewed. So hopefully you guys will be done and gone. And then there's a close your IRB report that nobody ever actually completes. That's supposed to be completed. The graduate students are about the only ones that ever actually do those. And we appreciate that because then we can be like, okay, this one's done, closed. We don't have to send you reminders to your Islander, TAMUCC Islander account that get rejected back because you've left the university and your email's closed down. We're like, oh, I guess they're done with that. So there's also always the fun of, we got this one in the last week. Somebody had done this study maybe 3 years ago. And then somebody submitted a study with the exact same name, title of the study. And it was like, oh, revision, amendment, what's going on? And it was actually a brand new, protocols were different between the two. They just had the same name. And it's like, oh, interesting. How they got the exact same name. There are some titles that just, research on the use of X and Y and Z on students. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess. So, okay, so, where is it? Okay, so last final points. Simple research is usually pretty good. We're not going to cure cancer or win the Pulitzer Prize or a Nobel Prize. I thought I was going to. I didn't. They still haven't called me. I'm still mad about that. No. So, again, make sure you're familiar with the local research context. Like I said, CCISD, Driscoll, Bay Area, all the hospitals, the counseling centers, they all have their own reviews that you may have to go through. And again, getting more than one IRB done can take a longer time. And our review board meets once a month. Expedited, like I said, it usually takes about a month to get most of these through and hopefully back. Although we've, because it's just us right now and we don't have an ORC people, it can be 45 days, month and a half, 6 weeks. Some of the expedited and the full board could be 6 weeks or longer if it gets sent back for revisions. So yeah, if you're trying to graduate in December and you haven't submitted your IRB, good luck with that. You might want to change it to May and notify your parents or whoever else is showing up for your graduation. Because yeah, you may, you might get the approval in November.
So basically just start now.
Start now. Start now is a good idea.
But
So
if it's exempt, it doesn't need to go.
it doesn't need to go. It does have to come to IRB, and that should be a pretty quick turnaround. But again, what you think is exempt, we could get it and be like, no, not exempt. So there's that, you know, I try to make it as simple there, but there's always that second look by us that goes, you need to clarify this a little bit so that we can truly say it's exempt. Because if you don't clarify it, we're going to go, expedited. And goes out to the reviewer, they can go, no, full board. So we can always push it up another level. Something that you could submit as exempt, we could push all the way up to full board and be like, yeah, we think normally won't happen. But again, so you guys will put what you think it is, and then we will look at it and go, yay or nay.
So exempt takes about how long?
Exempt, 2 or 3 weeks.
And then the other 2 are about 6 weeks?
Yeah, about 6, saying that everything is included in the form from day one and everything is good to go and there's not any send back, revise, resubmit sort of stuff. So, and full board, if it does go full board and it gets at the full board level and they want a table it and defer it and we have to look at it again, we meet once a month, the first Friday of the month. So, all of a sudden you could get into we met, meet again, hopefully it doesn't get tabled again, so it could take longer as far as full board goes. So, again, when can you start? Several factors, like I said, quality, completeness, you guys know this, the more you put in there, all those things.
For me to find, the higher your grade is gonna be.
Yeah, exactly, and is everything there? All those forms, all those surveys, all those consents, all the ASENTs, all that stuff written.
So you don't need like the tedious procedure, like the...
No, like I said, we want the highlights. We want I'm going to have them sit for 45 minutes and then write for 30. I'll bring them in the room. They will sit, wait, and do this next thing. And then we'll have them do this survey and this survey. So, yeah. Simplify it as much as possible. What are you telling, what's your bar/coworker spiel, the elevator spiel? Somebody asks you, what are you doing for your research? That 3-minute thesis thing. What are you doing for your research? You should be able to express that fairly simple, fairly easily. And you get down to the too many nitty-gritty details and people are like, I always tell my students, introduce yourselves, what do you do? I'm like, consider it like talking to a parent or a potential partner at a bar. You got 30 seconds to introduce yourselves before that partner's parent starts rolling their eyes like, this guy's a loser, I don't want him anywhere near my daughter, and he goes and finds the shotgun. But they've got that amount of time to try and get this information. It's the same sort of thing. You want to get it across quickly but understandably. Because if you start talking over everybody's heads, it's going to become a issue, and it'll be like, no, we don't know what you're saying. So, big thing, number of studies in the queue determines, like I said, right now we've got about 9 to 12 out there in the world. As you guys start getting yours in so that you can graduate in May or August or whatever, there'll become a little traffic jam, and it's like, okay, we try to get those out, but keep in mind the people reviewing them are faculty members. So we work over Christmas, but we work really slowly over Christmas. We work over Thanksgiving, but we tend to work really slowly over Thanksgiving. So again, and then we get finals, and it's like, review this or grade papers. And so stuff kind of gets or you'll get the email from Bradley Lowenstein or from the Office of Research Compliance or from the IRB or whichever group you send it to. You'll get an email from them. How long does it take you to respond? And include the attachments or whatever else they're asking for. You get it turned around pretty quickly. They'll turn it around to the reviewer pretty quickly. It takes you 2 or 3 weeks. Well, That's not our fault. We'll just kind of be like, okay, I'll keep working on other stuff. So, and then like I said, availability of IRB members to review. Again, we are faculty. We do have other jobs. And so we take a lot of passion in helping you guys, but it's also, you know, we like to have lives too. So it's kind of that balance between, okay, I need to not get burnt out. Otherwise, you really don't want burnout faculty member just being reviewer number 2 on your paper. And reviewer number 2, if you've ever had somebody reject your submission or review a paper for manuscript for submission, reviewer number 2 is that evil guy that just marks everything up because he's in a bad mood. And you're just like, dude. I've got a reviewer number 2. I'm just like, I'm ignoring reviewer 2. Reviewer 1 and 3 really like my paper. They're like, accepted with minor revisions. Reviewer 2 is like, and we're like, we're ignoring reviewer 2. So, again, that availability makes a big difference too. So, but like I said, we will try and get stuff done as quick as possible. So any questions? I know I went a little longer than I had planned to.